Today, we're talking about one of the most common topics that comes up in my coaching conversations with actuaries. And it's also a common element in the learning goals that participants in our leadership development training program set for themselves. It's confidence. But what is confidence? Why is it important for your career? And what are some ways that you can build your confidence if you're just not feeling it? Joining me for this conversation is Martin Mulcare, an experienced actuary and advisor, and my co-facilitator of the Guardian Actuarial Senior Leadership Program. Martin, welcome.
Hi, Julia. A treat to be here today.
Always a treat to have a conversation with you, Martin. And I'm particularly interested to talk to you about confidence today because it does come up so often. And I should start the conversation though by saying that neither you nor I are professionally trained or experts in confidence or anything if that sort of becomes an impediment for people's day-to-day experience. We're really just talking in our capacity as coaches and educators and trainers.
Sure.
So let's start by defining what is confidence.
Well, as you said, Julia, I'm not an expert. So I actually took the liberty of looking up some definitions. And you know what? I was amazed at how different the definitions were in otherwise reputable dictionaries. And this gives you an idea of the range. Things like trust in oneself, belief in oneself, or things like certainty of abilities or knowledge, faith in abilities, one feeling of one's power. So there's a lot of variety. Do they resonate with you? How do you define confidence?
For sure, because I think, Martin, it is that feeling, isn't it? It's that feeling of I trust that I can do this, or I feel prepared to do something. I guess it's a hard thing to measure, but it is that sort of inner sense, isn't it? There's an inner sense of whether you feel confident.
Yeah, and I think it's a good word in a sense. And I think it's such a personal element, personal experience, that I'm not going to define it, but hopefully those ideas from the dictionary get the audience in line with what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent, excellent. So, that said, if we all have our own kind of personal definition of confidence, why is confidence important in business?
So I'm going to take a fairly broad answer to that one. We spend a lot of our life at work. And let's look at the negative side. If we don't have confidence, if our day is filled with nervousness, doubt, worse, fear, if we're worried for the time of the week that we're at work, the large part of our life actually, then I don't think that's very good for us.
Mm.
So my simple answer is that it's important to be confident at work, so we've got a good sense of well-being as well as being able to deliver value in the workplace.
Mm.
What do you think? How do you see confidence in business?
Yeah, I like the well-being angle to that, Martin. I think that it is important that we're feeling okay in what we're doing and that we're not feeling worried or nervous. And as we said at the start, if that is something that's happening for you, then it's probably worth getting some professional advice about that because it could be something else. But I guess we don't want to be feeling worried about whether or not we're doing a good job or whether or not we've got the skills to do what we're needing to
Hmm?
do all the time. It's not very good for our well-being to be feeling that way all the time. And we're probably not performing at our best if we're feeling overly worried all the time either.
Yeah, that would be my view. I think it's a nice way of expressing it,
Hmm.
performing at our best.
Hmm. Hmm. So not only is it essential for our personal well-being, it's probably also essential for our professional success and well-being as well. Yeah. And I think that comes through, I said at the start, this is a topic that comes up a lot in my coaching conversations, but it's also something that you and I have seen in the goals of our participants in the Guardian Actuarial Senior Leadership Program. And I've also seen it in the New Managers Program too, that wanting to feel more confident as a manager or as a senior leader is an important um, aspect, an important development goal for a lot of people coming to us.
Mm. Yep, indeed.
Mm. Mm. Um, and in fact, I like to measure it, even though it's a personal definition. So I like to measure it and track it and see how that changes over the course of each program. But aside from someone externally measuring it and tracking it like we do for the participants in our program, how can we recognize confidence in ourselves?
Well, you've already given a clue. It is very much a personal feeling. So I'll probably take this opportunity to throw it to the audience. What does confidence look like, feel like, smell like to you as an individual? That perhaps one way is to think about a task or an activity or a skill that you can remember learning, and you can think about what it was like when you weren't confident, and then think about how you feel now. So I can still remember learning to drive. Let me assure you, I was not at all confident. I was very nervous. It wasn't something that came natural to me. But perhaps some other fellow motorists may have a different view. But these days, I feel very confident and comfortable behind the wheel. So it's really interesting to think about what is that feeling when I turn the car on.
Mm,
And how that feels for you, which may be quite different than for me.
mm. And what does that feel like for you now, Martin, compared to when you were learning to drive?
I think it's a sense of calm, composure, but also the ability to think about other things, have whether it be on the road, broader range of senses in play, or being able to have a conversation or listen to the radio.
Mm. So, in the same way that increased confidence at work, we are talking about that being sort of more personal well-being for you and also professional performance. That also translates to your example as a driver too, because you're not feeling as nervous behind the wheel, but you have more bandwidth to respond to whatever else is going on around you. So then I
Yeah,
guess if we bring that back to the workplace, it's another example of how important it is to feel confident.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's a great example. So looking for those internal feelings of confidence, are we able to notice other things or are we fixated on that thing that we're feeling maybe worried about? They can be some great ways to observe our confidence.
Yeah, indeed.
And so early in our careers, Martin, I mean, we don't always have, when we may not be the most senior person in a meeting or in the room. We might still be working through our actuarial exams, or we may only be sort of newly qualified. How can we feel confident at work when we're very junior, very early in our careers?
Okay, so it's really important that people understand that I think certainly the majority of people I interact with, they see confidence inextricably linked to competence, right? Capability. So not surprisingly, if you're from that school of thought, early in your career, you're still learning things, right? You're still learning things, and therefore your competence, your capability is not at a high level necessarily, and therefore your confidence may be correspondingly lower. Um, I just want to remind the audience, though, that uh, that correlation between confidence and capability is linked. It's not essential. There are plenty of people who've got competence but not confidence, and we'll explore perhaps a little later in this conversation. Early in your career, while you're still learning, how can you still have some sense of calm, composure, be confident, even if you are still early in your career?
Mm. That's a really interesting point, Martin, because I think that competence confidence connection is often the thing that we go to first. And sometimes that can be why we feel like we might not be confident or because we don't have enough experience. Do we have enough competence? And it's an interesting thing too, because when we do become competent at things, they feel easy to us. So we don't always see that they're things that we're good at because they seem to come easy. So it can be a tricky one to separate the competence confidence piece. Um, but I like your approach that we don't necessarily have to have competence to feel confident. Instead, we
Yeah,
might
and
be able to feel confident that we'll be able to figure it out rather than we'll feel confident that we'll know the answer.
Yeah, and please, uh, viewers, listeners, do not misunderstand me. Competence and care is a critical principle in our code of conduct. I am not suggesting that competence is not required. It is fundamental to your professional life. But we need to recognize you're not going to be fully there early in your career, and therefore, how can we still have some sense of well-being
Yeah.
while we're learning, while we're
Yeah.
getting better, while we're improving, while we're gaining that competence?
Yeah. Yeah. Having an appropriate level of competence for our experience
Yeah.
is going to be, should be enough for us to have that confidence. Yeah, okay. An important distinction there and an excellent plug for reminder of our code of conduct and our obligations there too. We don't want to be confident without competence either. We don't want to be saying, oh, we can do this and going out and being cowboys. That wouldn't be ethical or good practice either. So, okay, so what if we do have the necessary competence to be doing something at work, but we just don't feel confident and we want to feel more confident? Should we just fake it till we make it?
Okay, so Julia, I have a problem with the term "fake it till you make it." I understand that it's popular, and I understand where it comes from, uh, but that reminds me of another principle of the code of conduct, that of integrity. That let's not pretend if we don't have the competence. Right? So again, let's be clear: we're not pretending or putting out that we've got a skill that we don't have.
Mhm.
However, um, there are times where we're still nervous because we're in a situation where we would like to feel a little more confident. So let's play with a non-business example.
Mhm.
So imagine I'm lining up for my first half marathon and I'm feeling just a little nervous and I want to feel more confident. Oh, so first thing, what's wrong with being nervous? I mean, Julia, can you think about why might I want to feel more confident at the start line?
Mm. Well, that's a great question, Martin, because I've never run a half marathon. So I think I'd be feeling very nervous if I was standing at the start of a 21K race, personally. But thinking about my own, watching my husband run his first marathon this year, and so much goes into that training for something so big, and so wanting to feel like you can make it, wanting to feel like you can do it, knowing that there's people watching, that someone will be timing you, that you've put all this effort into it, and everyone knows that you're doing this. So you would want a sense of confidence that you are able to follow through with what you've started to do.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And so you've already given us a clue. One way, many people, in fact, would recommend the best way of feeling confident at the starting line is to do the practice, do the training, be able to say, like, I've already run so many practice runs. I've done 10Ks, I've done 15Ks, I'm doing these times, I'm feeling this good. But let's just say beyond that competence, we're still mighty nervous.
Mm.
What might be some options to get some confidence? So one might be find someone to run with,
Mm.
especially with someone you know who's going to be supportive, encouraging, and capable. Then just having the right people around you might be helpful. So that's one. The second, actuaries, risk managers. Some of the things you might do to improve the confidence would be to think, no, it's okay. I've got my hat. Um, I slept well. I've got the right nutrition. I'm hydrated. I know the course. I know where the drink stops are. So that risk management might also help one's feeling of confidence. What else? Uh, and maybe just to get rid of the idea of a target. My friend ran 100 minutes. I really want to get to that, break that 100-minute barrier. Bzz. Maybe that works for you, but maybe for me, the idea of a target, something that's going to be very difficult to attain, is already making me feel some sense of dread that I'm not going to beat my target.
Mm.
So maybe just getting rid of the targets might be a third option. Uh, what else? Maybe for some people, having a sense of purpose with your run. For some half marathons, might be associated with some type of fundraising drive. You're doing this for your favorite charity. Or maybe that you've promised somebody that you would finish. This is something that you have been working on, and therefore this promise gives you a different set sense of purpose. Yeah, so there are a few clues. How can we feel more confident, not just by doing more training, improving our capability, but the right people, the right risk management, taking away those imposing targets, perhaps having some sense of purpose.
I think they're such great examples, Martin, and I can see how they'd apply to a marathon. And I can also see how they've applied in my own experience if I transfer that into a business context. So, one of the things I feel most nervous about is getting up and presenting to people. And so, over time, I have become more confident doing that. And even though I liked what you said about nerves, because I still feel nervous before a presentation, but I also feel more confident than I used to, even though the nerves are still there. But some of those examples that you've just given around the marathon, the half marathon, the race, I can see how those have also helped my confidence in presenting. So, doing the preparation, knowing that you're ready, having the right people around you, or, having a friend in the audience, even doing the risk management, thinking through what could go wrong and what can you make sure you have in place. Not comparing yourself to others. And just, comparing yourself to your own last presentation. But also that higher purpose too that you talked about, maybe when you're running a race, you might have a charity or a fundraiser. If I think about great presentations where I felt more confident, it's when I stop thinking about myself and I start
Okay.
thinking about my role in delivering a great message to the audience. And that almost takes the pressure off me, helps me to feel more confident because it doesn't feel so much about me, it feels more about my audience. So, some really interesting tips and parallels there, Martin.
Well, it's interesting which parallels especially resonated with you. Again, if, at risk of repeating myself, it's a very personal thing.
Mm,
And I think people viewing, people listening might think about which of those four things or five things
mm,
in the marathon example, which resonated with you, which
mm,
appeals to you, which is likely to be an option that's going to work for you.
mm,
Anyway.
mm. So powerful. Okay, so to wrap up then, if we bring it back to actuaries wanting to build their confidence, Martin, what tips would you have for actuaries wanting to build their confidence at work?
Okay, so here are a few of my tips, and they've got some, using your word, parallels with the running example. But the first is clear. Clear. You want confidence at work, be good at it, right? So be competent. Be competent. Like that's ticket to the game. So that's the first tip. But as per my earlier suggestion, competence isn't sufficient necessarily. So let's think about these tips. Different people, different styles. Self-talk is critical for some people. So it's how you monitor what messages are in your own mind, what you're saying to yourself. If you're saying, I'm not very good at this is going to be a tough day, not sure how well this is going to go, versus I can do this, relax. Last week this went just fine. So that's self-talk. Or for some other people, it's not so much the self-talk, it's the others talk. Find the people who are going to be encouraging, supportive, who are going to be with you on the journey, going to be giving good feedback. And remember, you, some people may have heard me say before, eagles don't seek feedback from turkeys, right? So be careful whose voices you actually do listen to. So that's one. Either self-talk or others talk. You might think about that tip. The second, actuaries in particular, we need to get rid of that perfectionist streak. Where if you want to be confident, don't be aspiring always to perfection.
Mm,
It's perfection is often the enemy of progress.
mm,
Next one, controversial, but for many people, taking action is a great way of dispelling those doubts and fears.
mhm,
So if you're procrastinating, if you're so worried you can't start, you want to try something else, you want to check something, another risk management step. Sometimes the tip is Nike, just do it. And the action will dispel at least some of the doubts and fears. Um, and the last tip is, again, for actuaries, we need to be comfortable with uncertainty.
Mm.
Right? So if your confidence relies on a certain outcome, I think you're in the wrong business.
Mm.
So just think about how you manage your uncertainty. And I think there are two ways. I think some people manage uncertainty by having some willingness, ability to adapt. I can be flexible. I can deal with the uncertainty because I can adapt. The second is a very different one, dealing with uncertainty via some risk management. So your confidence is, well, if this goes wrong, if this doesn't work out the way I'd like, then that's okay because I can do this in advance or this is my mitigation plan.
Mm.
So deal with uncertainty. All right. So 5, be competent, get the right talk, self or external, bring the perfectionist streak back a notch or two, take action to dispel doubts and fears, and be more comfortable with uncertainty. They're my 5 tips.
Amazing tips. Thank you. I think starting with competence, it's like the way you've described that, it's a good foundation, but it's not just about the competence, it's about the self-talk or what you're hearing from others. And I think, people come to our training programs learning to build new skills around management and leadership. And so that in itself helps with the confidence. But as you've pointed out, it's not just having the skills that makes you confident. It's the talking to other people. It's about hearing from others. Sometimes it's about validating or realizing and recognizing how much we do know or how competent we might be, and we just haven't realized it yet. But
Mm.
I also really like your tip around taking action. Just one step sometimes can just move you from that paralyzed fear. I'm not confident. I'm not ready for this to, okay, well, baby steps. I'm just moving forward inch by inch. And then you get that momentum. Um,
So, Julia, from your coaching experience, what tip would you like to add?
what tip would I like to add? I think I think my tip is probably building on your one around being comfortable with uncertainty. And I think for me, it's been and for myself and seeing this in others as well, it's about not just saying confidence is a destination. It's actually, you can have confidence along the way, and you can have confidence by reframing the I can't do this, or I'm not, or I'm worried about, to your point about uncertainty, I can't do what is going to happen next, or I can't manage what might happen next, but I can reframing that and just saying, okay, well, I feel confident in my ability to handle whatever challenge comes up. And I might not need to know the answer straight away, but I feel confident that I can figure it out.
Mm,
I feel
mm.
confident that I've got the networks in place, I've got the skills and the knowledge or the resources to find the solution to whatever's in front of me, rather than I just have to have it all right now, because I don't think it's a destination. I think confidence comes with the journey, but I think not feeling as though we have to reach a certain point to feel confident can help us to feel confident before we get there.
Yeah, yeah, good
Mm.
tip. Good
Mm.
tip. Good building.
Well, Martin, I feel like this is an interesting conversation that we could probably continue in lots of different directions and dimensions. But I think we've given some good starting points around definitions, about the personalized nature of confidence, about some of the key ingredients for confidence as well. And we see this in our programs, don't we, with our participants, that listening to each other, building skills, and validating their own competence, and building that confidence in themselves helps to increase confidence at work. Martin, any final thoughts?
When I was preparing for our chat today, Julie, I was thinking about people who impress me with the way that they kind of exude confidence. And that confidence in that calm, composed way, not a bravado, certainly not an arrogance. And It made me think about Maslow and the concept of self-actualization. And for viewers, for listeners, if you're familiar with it, I'm really interested in your thoughts on the link between confidence and self-actualization. If you're not familiar with Maslow, look it up, self-actualization. And I'm not sure myself, but there's something about that higher level that Maslow talks about, that sense of purpose, that sense of worth and whether that kind of intrinsically brings with it a sense of confidence.
Mm. Certainly interesting food for thought, Martin, in terms of our where we are on Maslow's hierarchy and how that plays out in terms of our confidence at
Yeah.
work and in life. Great reflections, Martin. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today.
Thanks, Julia. Treat to be here.